Hello, everyone. I wish to welcome you all to the first of our webinar series, The Secret of Sustainability in Business, an introduction to centuries-old businesses in Japan. My name is Yuko Kaifu, and I'm the president of Japan House Los Angeles. It is a great pleasure for us to present this special webinar with distinguished speakers from both Japan and the United States. I did not realize until recently that Japan has the largest number of companies in the world that are at least 100 years old. They have survived and thrived despite natural disasters, wars, and economic recessions in the long history of the country. It is worth exploring the secret of their sustainability and resilience by hearing from the speakers today. Incidentally, World Trade Center of Los Angeles recently released Foreign Direct Investment Report for 2020. According to the report, Japan has continued to be the top source of the foreign direct investment in California, with 3,672 establishments, employing over 115,000 California residents. I'm sure among those nearly 3,700 Japanese companies, there are quite a few who have been operating in the United States for many years, like Kikkoman we are featuring today. What that means is that the economies of the two countries are closely interconnected and intertwined and influencing each other. In that regard, it is significantly important to hear both Japanese and American perspectives about longevity and sustainability of Japanese companies. And I'm personally looking forward very much to hearing today's webinar. This webinar has been co-sponsored and co-presented by Japan House Los Angeles and Research Institute for the Centennial Management in Japan. I also wish to acknowledge Kika Hanazawa, board chair of Fashion Girls for Humanity and CEO of VPL, for her precious advice and input. Before I begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. Please turn your attention to the screen. Everybody except for the speakers will be muted and videos are turned off. The audience chat has been activated, so please stay engaged throughout the program. If you have questions, please use the Q&A bar at the bottom of your screen to send in questions anytime during the program. We will try to cover as many questions as the time allows. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Japan House website in the near future. Now, let's start the program. I'm happy to introduce our moderator for this series, Professor Ethan Bernstein. Professor Bernstein is Associate Professor in the Organizational Behavior Unit at the Harvard Business School. He earned his PhD in management at Harvard, where he also received a joint degree in law and business administration. During his college years at Amherst College, he spent some time in Japan, studying at Doshisha University in Kyoto. Prior to joining Harvard Business School as a faculty member, Professor Bernstein worked for the Boston Consulting Group in Toronto and Tokyo for half a decade. He also was one of the founding executive members of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau when the Bureau was established 10 years ago. He wrote many books and research papers, including those on Japanese business management. There's no better person to serve as the facilitator for today's discussion. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Professor Bernstein to take the screen. Ethan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yuko, for that very, very kind introduction. Of course, we're not here today to talk about me. We're here to talk about centuries-old businesses in Japan. But I will say it's just personally a pleasure to kick off this exciting series. And I'm grateful to Yuko and the Japan House team for inviting me to moderate it. So we are here, as I say, because of this topic, the secret of sustainability in business. And when I looked at the list of participants, all of you, the several hundred of you now out there listening, and your backgrounds, I noticed rather extraordinary variety, which I assume suggests that you will each see this topic through very different lenses and perspectives. And so I'm curious, in part because at HBS we care so deeply about engagement, that while I tell you why I find this topic so interesting, I would love for you to introduce yourselves on chat, which is open, by telling us why you found this interesting enough to give up an hour of your afternoon or morning to be here with us. So just a few brief words if you want in the chat, which will help us, of course, cater this session to you. In the meantime, let me give you my impetus. And it, of course, starts here with this article in the New York Times, which talked about a number of centennial businesses. My co-host, Professor Toshio Goto, who I will introduce in a moment, knows this content well. But this article from the New York Times talked about the ways in which Japan has nurtured businesses that aren't necessarily about simply profit, but are about sustainability, are about longevity, are about survival. And it almost suggests as if they are somehow different as a result. And I'd like to pick up that theme today, but I'd like to do so and suggest that although I've spent, as Yuko suggested, time in Japan, and so many of these pictures from the article, the New York Times, mean a lot to me, I've also spent time in the business world in Japan, and I know that this is a representation of small businesses, but scaled businesses also see the world slightly differently. And I'd like to make sure we get a chance to hear about that from our wonderful guests at Kikkoman and from Professor Goto. What I would suggest you listen for today, and I will, as a moderator, try to bring these conversations out. I hope you hear and listen for the role of community, the role of family, the role of product society fit, the role of timing, the role of location, and the role of cultural connection as we think about this idea of centuries old, or for that matter, simply sustainable businesses and what that might mean. And I'd like you to consistently ask yourself the question, as I do as a professor at the Harvard Business School, is there a trade-off, as we seem to often teach in our classrooms, between this kind of sustainability and scale, as the New York Times article suggests, or is actually that a false trade-off? And what we're really talking about here is simply good business and management practice, and what can we learn from the stories that we hear today. So that's my cue for us. I have only one other important job at this moment in time, which is to introduce a person who knows a lot more about this than I do. So I'd like to introduce the co-host of this series, Professor Toshio Goto. Toshi, as he's told me to call him, is Representative Director at the Research Institute for Centennial Management and Research Professor at Graduate School of Management, Japan University of Economics. Toshi started his professional career at NEC. After working for NEC for over 30 years, he then pivoted his career and entered the academic world. And I know, and you will discover, that he is regarded as the leading authority on the topic of sustainable business growth. Toshi is a graduate of Tokyo University with a bachelor's degree in economics, and is also, I'm most proud to say, a fellow Harvard Business School alum. I won't tell them what class you were, Toshi, but you were Section I for any of those, and I saw a few of you out there who are graduates who will care that, that he was Section I. I'm very honored to co-host this series with him, and I look forward to many stimulating conversations together in the future. Everyone, please welcome Toshi.
Thank you very much, Ethan, for your nice introduction of my 2 years in Harvard Business School, way back half a century ago. I'm really enjoying it. Welcome everybody to join our seminar from all over the world. It's a wonderful world which I'm going to introduce. Quick overview of century-old firms, starting with Japan. 5 years ago, I found in Japan there are 25,321 firms in operation over 100 years, of which 3,937 are in operation over 200 years, 1,938 in operation over 300 years, 147 in operation over 500 years or over. Amazingly, I found 21 firms in operation over 1,000 years, starting with a company named Kongogumi, which started the business of construction of wooden-made building for shrine and temple, starting in the year of 578, 1440 some years ago. But there is another type of long-lived companies. This one I show. They are now manufacturing parts components for satellite. They started business in the year of 1756. Now we look our attention to the world. I here show you the number of century-old firms by country. The red column shows the number of century-old firms by country, starting with Japan, followed by the United States and Germany, so on, of which blue column shows the number of 200 years over firms by country. Again, Japan the top, followed by Germany and UK. We are updating the figure, and last year we found Japan has more than that, 52,328 as of 2019. So we are updating the rest of the world one by one. We'll let you know soon we found it. Anyway, this shows the 10 oldest surviving companies in the world. Only 2 points which I like to make. In the center, you can see Most of them are in Japan, exception only one in Germany. But another point I'd like to call your attention to is on the extreme right. It says family business. Majority of long-lived companies are either family-owned or managed till now. I think long-lived companies are a symbol of Japan in many aspects, including but not limited to history, culture, and family. They have a good balance of tradition and innovation, which you are going to see in the presentation made by Kikkoman a couple of minutes later. They are a symbol of sustainability. In the business world, we say they have sustainable business model. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Toshio. And you will continue to be with me throughout this conversation as we ask questions. But for now, we want to listen. And the person we want to listen to is Mr. Osamu Mogi. Mogi-san, he's asked me to call him Sam, is a member of the board of directors and executive corporate officer, head of international operations at Kikkoman Corporation. He obtained his MBA from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And Sam, I don't think you know this, but my grandfather actually graduated from that same institution. So I have a fondness for it, as I do for Milwaukee. After working for what was now PricewaterhouseCoopers in Chicago, he returned to Japan and joined Kikkoman Corporation in 1996. Since then, he has been responsible for the growth of Kikkoman's international business operations. Though Kikkoman as a company was incorporated in 1917, its founding history actually spans over 350 years and is deeply rooted in local communities in Japan. Sam is a descendant of one of the 8 founding families of the company, so we can offer that perspective as well. And I am very much looking forward to learning Kikkoman's history and its secrets from him. Sam, please take it away. Thank you for being here with us.
Okay, Ethan, thank you very much for your kind introduction. So let me share my screen. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to have the opportunity to speak here today. I think many of you are already familiar with our company's name and products. I hope you will be able to understand Kikkoman better after this short presentation. Since we have only 1 hour, I will start my presentation right away. I'd like to show you 3 ukiyo-e paintings to start my presentation. Do you know what's depicted in these paintings? More than 200 years ago, the largest city in Japan was Edo, now known as Tokyo. Edo was not only the largest city in Japan, but also in the world at that time, much more populated than Paris and London. Edo was a busy business city, and like current New York City, many street vendors sold fast food. These paintings depict the street vendors selling the fast food. What these street vendors were selling is, from the picture on the left, soba, buckwheat noodle, tempura, and sushi. These are considered Japanese delicacies and sometimes are very expensive. But the root of these dishes is street food from a few hundred years ago. These are just 3 examples of popular Japanese food. In these and in many other Japanese dishes you could name, there is a common ingredient. That is soy sauce, the main product of Kikkoman. As a company, Kikkoman has more than 100 years of history, but the source of this can be traced back more than 350 years ago to the present-day Noda City in Chiba Prefecture, where our soy sauce brewing began. The current Kikkoman was founded in 1917. Most recent result are group net sales of approximately 470 billion yen with operating income of 43 billion yen. Over 7,000 employees worldwide unite together to promote and propel group's business. As I mentioned a moment ago, our main business of soy sauce has been the backbone of Japanese food culture for many years. But as you can see here, currently 60% of net sales and 70% of operating profit is generated overseas outside Japan. Looking at composition by area, North America is the top performer for both net sales and operating income. This has been an overview of our company. And next, I will move on to today's theme of coexistence with the community while giving some example. But before moving on, we'll have short discussion right here, right, Lisa?
Yes, I admit, Sam, I'm a bit hungry right now, seeing those pictures. And I'm just curious, because I want to personalize this. You were a working professional at PricewaterhouseCoopers. In 1996, you decided to join Kikkoman. Can you tell us what was attractive to you about coming back to Kikkoman and how that has played out in these numbers you're showing us, which are really quite extraordinary in terms of their performance?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking. Actually, as Ms. Kaifu introduced me, I am a member of one of the founding family. So since I was very young, my grandfather always tell me, you will enter Kikkoman Corporation. So somehow, that idea was in my mind, But at that time, when I was in the US working for Pricewaterhouse, I really enjoyed my job. And I was, to be in the United States for longer time. But one day I received a phone call from my father, how long are you playing around? And I said, no, I'm not playing around. I'm working here seriously. But anyway, it was the moment I found out somehow needs to go back to Japan to join Kikkoman Corporation. But besides that, of course, I have been interested in the Kikkoman's business. One of my hobby is cooking. And to cook food, I always use soy sauce. I love to create something, and I love to create something which can make people happier or make them smile. I thought that we can't achieve that kind of thing, through my job at Pricewaterhouse, unfortunately. But I could do that with Kikkoman Corporation. So that was one of the motivations that I came back to Japan and joined Kikkoman Corporation at the time.
Thank you. And I want to invite Toshi to ask a question. I also want to remind everybody, I will be monitoring the Q&A questions all the way through, so I'll make sure to intersperse those questions. But Toshi, any questions?
I just like to supplement what Mogi-san said. Certainly, the company was institutionalized in the year of 1917 by the 8 founding families, but it has a long, long prehistory. We trace back to the year of 1661, when one of the families started a business. So from my viewpoint, Kikkoman is not just a 100 years company, the Kikkoman is 300 years company. Do you have any comment, Sam?
Well, exactly. Current Kikkoman Corporation was founded 104 years ago, but our business philosophy or doing business, idea is from many more years, back from our established year, which is 1917. We have been, trying to coexist with society ever since we started our business, which is more than 300 years ago. So, that philosophy is still here at current Kikkoman Corporation, but that's from many hundred years ago.
Thank you very much, which we are going to talk much about philosophy later on. Thank you very much.
So explain to us, and I'm sure you had a large role in this, how you took it from 62 to 73% on this slide and what the secret sauce, no pun intended, is. I want to see what's next, because as I say, I'm already hungry, so maybe you can satiate that with the next few slides.
Okay, sure. So as I mentioned, our business began in the region currently known as Noda City in Chiba Prefecture. As the region's core business entity, Kikkoman took responsibility to construct basic infrastructures and lifelines for employees and their families, including a financial institution to handle the earnings of the company and our employees, a hospital and fire department to protect the company, factory, and our employees' house. Also, for the transport of raw materials and product, we had a railway, and we constructed a waterwork system for the purpose of soy sauce production. In this way, facilities and services that originally were constructed and maintained as a part of Kikkoman business operations were transferred to the city and third parties, made available to residents of the community, and our company's facilities came to be used for all of the Noda area as community infrastructure. We continue to carry out our operations, keeping in mind coexistence with the community. And when we do business outside of Japan, we keep the same business philosophy in mind. I have one more story about how Kikkoman helped preserve the culture and technique of soy sauce brewing after World War II. During the war in the mid-1930s, there was a shortage of soybean and other raw materials of soy sauce. Many soy sauce were making plans to switch to chemical soy sauce, which could be easily produced with less raw materials. However, Kikkoman believed that brewing soy sauce should be preserved, and as such developed new soy sauce manufacturing method for brewing soy sauce that could be used even with limited raw materials. By providing this method free of charge, many producers were able to continue making brewing soy sauce. We didn't consider this as a profit of one company, but rather as the preservation and succession of brewing technology. We felt that food companies were obligated to protect Japanese food culture. If this manufacturing method had not been made public at that time, we may have been able to achieve gaining 100% of the market share in Japan, but it's not our philosophy. So I stop here. So back to you, Ethan.
Thank you. I am curious, I'm going to pick up on some of the themes I've seen in the Q&A and also in the chat here and ask you the question. One attendee asked, sustainability in the past does not indicate sustainability from the future. I'm curious to know what adaptations, in this case, are being undertaken going into the future, but I actually want to look at this in the past. So you're talking a little bit about the ways that Kikkoman has changed over time. Can you talk a little bit about how actually sustainability hasn't just meant staying the same, but has all involved adaptability in this process?
That's a very good question. We try to keep what we need to maintain, but at the same time, we challenge to change the way of doing business or something like that. So that our business philosophy to try to coexist with the local community remains, for the past 300 years. But way of achieving such goal, or actually doing the way of doing business, has been changed. I'm not sure that this could be the answer to your question, but
I asked it in part because I saw in this slide and your description of this story. So the industry went one way, you adapted a different way, the company adapted a different way. Where is the secret behind that? Why did Kikkoman adapt that way rather than taking the easy path?
May I give some comment, Ethan?
Yes,
If you
please.
don't mind? This is very, very important question. And this is a question I repeated many, many times during my research and interviewing. I found that sustainability is a continuation of innovation. Innovation mostly in technology and marketing, while keeping the spirit of the founder, as Mogi-san said. So from the beginning, day one, Kikkoman and the 8 founding families never changed their spirit. However, they adapted themselves to the ever-changing environment. That is how I interpret. But this last slide, which you are seeing here, is really amazing. It answered your question. This is amazing because Kikkoman made patent after spending a lot of money and time and knowledge. But the result was given free to the industry, he said, but industry means competitors. Harvard Business School never taught us this kind of stuff. They said, Harvard Business said, we make competition. We get stronger. We beat competition. But Kikkoman didn't do that because he said, he used a very good word. They saw the importance of human beings in this occasion, Japanese people, the poor condition. They made their patent free to the competitions twice, not only in the mid-1970s, but also after the World War II. So this tells how they maintain sustainability. And the answer to the question of what is the secret of longevity, the secret is very simple. Stay with the founder's spirit. working hard, not for your money, but for the society. This is my interpretation. Any comment?
Thank you very much for your interpretation. Actually, yes, your description is right. And I really appreciate your interpretation.
There's been a couple questions also about the role of family. So I want to make sure we keep that set of questions alive. In this case, if I'm correct, Sam, in the mid-1930s, it was not a public company. It was a family-owned company entirely. What was the role of family in taking this somewhat different approach? Toshi, I don't know, maybe we don't teach it quite as strongly there at HBS as you described, but what was the role of family in making these different decisions that Toshi's talking about?
Actually, I think currently Kikkoman Corporation is publicly held, and it's not family-owned company. Still, founding family involved with the management side, but it's not family-owned company. But back then, before we went public, we are the family company. And actually, one of the strong point of family-owned company is decision-making process, I think. We could make decision, the long-term business decision, instead of very short-term in terms of like a profit. So we could invest for the future of the business, for instance. And also, we could make decision quickly than the usual company comparing to those hired executives, I think. So one of the example was when we decided to invest in our first manufacturing facility in the United States in Wisconsin. It was a large investment compared to the size of Kikkoman at that time. But we decided because of the very long-term view, that kind of decision can't be made by hired management team because it's too risky and too long term. Because it can be profitable within like 3 or 5 years, which means it's not that current management can take advantage of that result. So because Kikkoman had a long-term business plan based on family-owned history, we could have decided huge investment in the United States at that time.
Thank you for those wonderful answers. Let's let you move forward because maybe that will actually enlighten us a little bit on the answers to some of the other questions I see in chat.
Okay, so next I'd like to show you a video about the making of Kikkoman soy sauce, which preserved the soy sauce culture we insist on.
Since time immemorial, Japan has integrated elements from various overseas cultures. Soy sauce is one such example. Differing from its counterparts in China and other Asian countries, Japanese soy sauce has been nurtured through Japanese tradition and dietary culture to become a uniquely Japanese seasoning. Kikkoman first began brewing soy sauce in the early 1600s. For over 3 centuries, Kikkoman has remained dedicated to making soy sauce with strict adherence to the traditional Japanese honjozo process of fermentation, without adding hydrolyzed vegetable protein, artificial flavors, or colorings. Today, Kikkoman soy sauce is enjoyed by people in more than 100 countries around the world. The 4 main ingredients of soybeans, wheat, salt, and water have remained unchanged from times of old. Microorganisms such as koji molds work on these ingredients to create the color, flavor, and aroma unique to soy sauce. The process of making soy sauce begins with the production of shoyu koji, the blending of koji molds with a mixture of steamed soybeans and roasted and crushed wheat. This is the room where shoyu koji is made. The mixture is kept here for 3 days to allow the Kikkoman aspergillus to grow. When the shoyu koji is ready, it is mixed with brine. The result is known as moromi. The moromi is put in tanks to ferment and mature. Growth of the Kikkoman aspergillus comes to a stop at this stage, and the enzymes created in the shoyu koji start to work in the fermentation and maturation process that lasts several months. The enzymes work on soybean proteins and wheat starch, converting them into amino acids and sugar, respectively. These combine to give soy sauce its distinctive flavor, or umami. Other amino acids and sugars combine to create soy sauce's unique color. Lactic acid bacteria and yeasts act on some sugars and amino acids in a multi-phase fermentation process, creating more than 300 aromatic properties that give depth to the flavor. After several months, the fully matured moromi is fed into a cloth sleeve from which the soy sauce will be slowly pressed. Producing top quality soy sauce is a slow process and must never be rushed. In the final step, the soy sauce is heated, which serves to adjust its color and aroma. Today, thanks to the introduction of strict hygienic standards and sophisticated computer controls, soy sauce can be mass-produced safely and reliably. The basic process, though, remains unchanged from times of old. It is proof that the superb color, flavor, and aroma of soy sauce, made possible through high-quality ingredients and microorganic fermentation, remain a favorite of people everywhere. So why is Kikkoman soy sauce so popular in so many countries? The flavor of soy sauce, though it may seem simple, actually involves 5 different tastes that are harmoniously integrated into one. They are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and savory, also known as umami. Although there is a wide variety of seasonings found around the world, very few can offer all 5 of these tastes, created through the power of fermentation. Kikkoman produces genuine soy sauce based on a proud tradition perfected over generations. Our soy sauce harmonizes with food to produce a marvelous flavor, with the 5 tastes transforming according to the ingredients and cooking methods. Soy sauce also does more than simply season your food. When heated, it produces an appetite-stimulating aroma. It removes fishy odors and helps prevent the proliferation of bacteria in food. Depending on the type of food, soy sauce can make sweet food sweeter or moderate the saltiness of salty food. These properties, combined with its excellent flavor, are the major reasons why soy sauce is the seasoning of choice in so many countries, with a number of overseas plants having been built to cater to this demand. Over the years, Kikkoman has honed the quality of Honjozo soy sauce through utilizing the best technology available. Backed by such tradition, Kikkoman soy sauce represents a pinnacle in the never-ending process of soy sauce evolution. The all-purpose seasoning for any cuisine on dinner tables the world over. Living up to its rich history and proven quality, Kikkoman soy sauce continues to enrich dining pleasure worldwide.
So next, I will speak about Kikkoman's business in your country, the United States. Our company has been exporting soy sauce to the US since 1868. However, the main user were only Japanese immigrants to the United States or people from other Asian cultures who are familiar with soy sauce. We established a sales office in San Francisco in 1957 with the hopes of introducing the deliciousness of soy sauce to local residents. However, at that time, for many Americans, soy sauce was unfamiliar dark color liquid. And even though it was on the shelves at supermarkets, no one reached out to buy it. In fact, I heard a story that locals asked the first of our senior colleagues assigned to the US, "What's that liquid that looks like it has been made by squishing blood bugs?" Soy sauce was a seasoning that Americans had not tried, so we made efforts to have them try out its flavor and to explain how to use soy sauce. We conducted in-store demonstrations at supermarket and grocery stores where we marinated meat with soy sauce and grilled it right before their eyes, attracting them with the now very familiar appetizing aroma. And after sampling, we recommended products to which recipes for how to use soy sauce were attached. We never introduced soy sauce simply as a seasoning for Japanese cuisine, but rather as a fusion of local ingredients with soy sauce to introduce a new deliciousness and generate new value for our customers. This stance remains unchanged even today. Please take a moment to view a TV commercial from that time.
Kikkoman, soy sauce, flavory, savory, soy sauce on fish, flour, meat, in salad or stew, makes your barbecue complete. Kids love it too. Keep it on the table and make sure the label says double K-O-M-A-N, Kikkoman, soy sauce.
Next, 1973, to meet an increasing demand from the US market, we established our first overseas soy sauce manufacturing base in Walworth, Wisconsin. At the opening ceremony of this plant, my grandfather, Osamu Mogi, made a statement. This is not Kikkoman's US plant. This is America's Kikkoman plant, demonstrating our company's stance of operating rooted in the community being of utmost importance. There is a short video about some of the story surrounding this plant. Due to this time construction, I'm not able to show this to you today. However, it can be watched on YouTube, so please take a look. The title is Make Haste Slowly. More than 60 years have passed since we honestly entered the US market. As can be seen here, there are market needs for a variety of soy sauce other than the standard Kikkoman soy sauce. And I think this shows just how well soy sauce has taken root in the United States. There are statistics showing presently over 60% of households have soy sauce on hand. Among these, there is even a tale about a countryside restaurant where if you ask, do you have any soy sauce? You will be answered with no soy sauce, but we do have Kikkoman, which we feel indicates just how many people are using our products. So I stop my presentation here for another discussion.
Thank you, Sam. I've noticed a number of the people who are here. I'm picking out a few. Jen, Cardi, Max, Ty, to some extent Mia, are actually in entrepreneurial and artistic endeavors. The story I got from that video was one of craft. To what extent has the craft of making soy sauce been key to the secret of sustainability for Kikkoman? Can you comment a little bit about it as a family member, someone who can look backwards and forwards?
Of course, this art of making soy sauce is very important part of our business, and also that the history. We have been doing this brewing soy sauce for more than 300 years. And that fact and the history of Kikkoman is the strong backbone of the corporation, I think. And also that the strong selling point if we try to market our product for consumers. Because we are a trusted brand, that's why that we could sustain our business for more than 300 years. So that's the one very strong point of selling our company as well as our brand.
Toshi, you've studied a lot of these companies. Is that something you see commonly across the Centennial companies, for that matter, in the United States as well?
Many things which I can talk about, but I'm afraid time is going by. But just one thing is craftsmanship, as you said, very important. And this is what China is yearning for. 5 years ago, Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang said to their people that we Chinese have to do that, craftsmanship. But craftsmanship needs some time and also the conscious effort. But without that, it couldn't be achieved. Craftsmanship in every sense of the product of Kikkoman. The taste, of course, but not only the taste, but the looks, and also every side of the business it is. But the most important thing is how they coexist with the local community, not only Japan, but all over the world. Wisconsin is one thing, and the Netherlands, which they have manufacturing plant, they are doing same thing. Wherever they do the same thing, however, slightly different manner. This is my interpretation.
So Sam, I know you have also prepared a couple of additional comments about Kikkoman's corporate responsibility views and philosophies. And there was one question about that. Maybe we can let you go forward and share those with us, and then we'll come back to Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. So we applied a business model for the United States to other areas also. And currently we have a total of 10 business bases for producing Kikkoman soy sauce, including the 3 in Japan. Kikkoman soy sauce is seasoning the life of customers in more than 100 countries worldwide. Furthermore, our Oriental food wholesale business currently operates out of 63 bases in 23 countries to deliver food products with particular emphasis on Japanese ingredients. And lastly, I'd like to speak about our connection with the local community in the United States. Since 1978, Kikkoman has supported Youth for Understanding, a high school exchange program. This hopes of having the next generation of youth experience different cultures. Each year, we sponsor this program, in which 23 students from the United States come to Japan to participate in a short-term exchange, and 4 Japanese students travel to the United States to participate in a 1-year exchange program. Unfortunately, currently this program is on hold due to COVID-19, but we hope we can resume the program soon. At our soy sauce manufacturing plant in Folsom, California, we installed a solar power generation system. And although the amount of energy itself is limited, we are seeking a path to renewable energy. Furthermore, water, which is very important for soy sauce making, is also very important for the survival of human race. On the 40th anniversary of manufacturing plant in Wisconsin, we supported the establishment of a facility for conducting research on water resources at the University of Wisconsin. So here today, I have only given a few examples, but what is most important to our company, which has continued to maintain and grow our business over many years, is knowing that there is no sustainable development of the company without its coexistence with the community. We believe business development that only focuses on company's profit, ignoring not only the natural environment, but also the region and its culture, will sooner or later have negative effect on the business. Each area has its own food culture and its own daily activities. In consideration with these, we aim to be a company that provides products and services that help to create new deliciousness and new value, a company whose existence is meaningful to the global society. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So we have a few more minutes for questions, which is wonderful. We'll maybe go a little bit over for those who want to stay and ask additional questions. Before we go into questions, I thought I'd take my moderator role seriously and take just a moment to share with you what I heard on those bullet points that I started with. We started with you as the person in this story, your grandfather talking to you, the passion you have for food and for cooking, and the family connections. And it sounds like a little bit about family responsibilities too, Sam.
Yeah.
And it put you right in the middle of this company that was founded in Noda City, its own little region, with a touch of art and a touch of community attached, that creates a love for the product and an interest in international growth. Mm-hmm. And your job, it sounds like, has been, and this is quite a challenge, to take a country like ours from unfamiliar dark color liquid, something from squished black bugs, to something that you called America's Kikkoman plant. And that the process of doing so was to think about international growth in terms of the local society, and to think of love for the product as a local food culture. And that ultimately, if I were to try and map out the secret of sustainability that you offered to us, that somewhere in here is the recipe, at least at Kikkoman, for keeping scale and sustainable at the same time. And I see you nodding. So what did I miss in all of that you want to make sure you tell this audience before we take final questions?
Because of the time constraint, I talked about our US operation or US business development only, but we do, of course, business outside the United States as well. And even with this COVID-19 pandemic situation, we try to cultivate some other markets such as South America or Africa, India. So we established business in Brazil and India during the past 1 year. And that's not just for profit, but we have a dream, that we think that we are just not selling soy sauce, but we are promoting the exchange of food culture. So as I mentioned in my presentation, in the US, we started to sell a product. We thought that we are not trying to sell soy sauce as sauce for Japanese food, but we try to sell it as an all-purpose seasoning, which means could be used in many American dishes. And we do same kind of approach in Europe, in other parts of Asia, and also that in Africa, India, South America too. So our purpose, or actually philosophy or dream of Kikkoman Corporation is try to promote exchange of culture. That's the way that we can contribute to the global society, I think.
Which is a lovely answer to my question up front about whether scale happens relative to these stories that we heard about in the New York Times article. Thank you. Toshi, I want to make sure I've been taking up too much airspace here. Thoughts that you have on reflections before we take a few of the questions I see from our audience.
From my viewpoint, many things are coming back to the founding family. I think, the family were educated and grown up, and their business in the local community, as you said, Ethan, in the small city of Noda. But it's, by direction, the family was educated, brought up by the local community, but they cultivated the Noda village. So, this kind of bi-directional relationship was very important. And they are proud, I think, the founding family were proud of being a part of the community, not only Noda, not only in Japan, but everywhere in the world, including Wisconsin and in the United States and South America, as he said. So this kind of stuff, this kind of commitment to the local community is a key for their sustainability. And this is a key, not only for Kikkoman, but for many 52,328 farms, which I found. Majority are doing same. This is what I like to share with everybody.
So maybe I can pick up on that and ask the question Sherry asked in the Q&A. And it's a question I think on many people's minds. I also saw there was a person who mentioned they're here because they do crisis management, and sustainability is a core part of that. We've all experienced, as Sherry points out, a bit of a crisis, a world crisis over the last year and a half. What are the lessons, Sam, if you were to step away from Kikkoman for just a moment and tell us what you think the lessons are of sustainability for thinking about post-COVID adaptability? What would you suggest to all those out there who are running companies, small, large, and somewhere in between?
Of course, everyone affected by COVID-19 pandemics. By corporation, the situation is different. So I'm not sure that what I say can be shared by all corporations. But one thing I can say is we need to be flexible in terms of doing business. One of the secret Kikkoman has been doing business for such a long time is we were flexible. We faced many challenges. I would say that the 300 years history was a history of challenges. Just for past 100 years, like 5 or 6, major crises. But time by time that we try to be flexible to adapt to the changes. So I think that we have to accept what will happen after this COVID-19 and be ready for that. Otherwise, if you stick to the current way of doing business, too much, I think you will lose the momentum for growth. I think that we need to be flexible. That's one thing, the common, among companies.
There's 2 more questions I would like to ask you.
Okay. Yes.
So one is, I'm going to combine Mark's question and Raul's question. Raul would like to know what the core values of longevity philosophy are for your family. And Mark said, our founder, Soichiro Honda, so he works at Honda, embraced failure. And they've had great many quotes from him about the value of trying something that didn't work out as expected. Has Kikkoman had similar learning experiences? And then so to bring that back to Raul's question, how has that fueled the learning philosophy that it sounds like Kikkoman has? What are the founding family or founding families' principles, values? How do you articulate what it is that you stand for?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, one of the basic value is maybe share profit. Don't take all profit, to share profit with the stakeholders. That's one thing, I think. So, of course, that to invest in the infrastructure or lifeline in city of Noda many years ago was one of the way we share our profit to the society. And of course, we share our profit to the employees or something like that too. I think that this philosophy to share profit is the very basic thing that our family has been doing for the past many years. And learning from the past was the second question, right?
Yes, like Soichiro Honda and his management philosophies as quoted by his people.
I can't think of one example, from the past.
It's not so bad to not be able to think of examples of learning from failure. I think that speaks to the sustainability of your business.
I know, but one thing I could say is our domestic business in Japan and the business outside Japan. The domestic business in Japan, of course, after World War II, that we had a significant growth in our business in Japan. But somehow the management at the time, foresee that in near future, this growth will stop. So they decided to invest in two ways. One is diversification of product. We started wine business. We acquired Del Monte business in Japan and something like that. And the other one was internationalization. So these two. So the management at the time was clever enough to invest fast enough to prevent some crisis. But if talking about our domestic sales, we are trying to expand the business, but because in Japan that we have declining population and population getting older and older too. So the market size is limited or shrinking a little bit. So it's difficult for us to expand, aggressive business plan. But we were fortunate that we had that international business and we could grow, there.
Well, they were fortunate to have you running it. So that's my last question, actually. And it picks up on several questions that attendees have raised around the differences between running a business in the United States and Japan. I mean, everything from one individual mentions that the water is different in Japan, and so maybe soy sauce tastes different in the United States, to another wondering how separately the US division and the Japanese division operate. Can you speak a little bit to how this idea of being a centuries-old business has either helped or hurt you as you did try to internationalize it in the United States, where many of us are currently located?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that this century-old history of Kikkoman helped our business growth in the United States, but not limit, such potential. And currently, most of the board member of Kikkoman Corporation had an experience of doing business outside Japan. So we think globally, and I think our decision-making process is matching the Kikkoman Group's needs, which is we need to grow outside Japan.
Thank you. Toshi, I think we're almost near the end. I wanted to give you a chance for a final word. Then Sam, I'll come to you for a final word if you have any, and then I'll close briefly. Toshi, final words for the audience based on what you've learned?
Any kind of companies are living or doing business in the environment. And the environment, including this pandemic, affect their business a little more, very much, right? There's no exception. But one thing which I found in our internet survey, which we conducted 1 year ago, found that Centennial companies in Japan has a lot of money with them. I'm talking liquidity at hand. Their answer to our question is, we can survive without any revenue half a year. Somebody answered, 21% answered, we can live up with current money for 2 years. So I'm saying the commitment to the society is very important, of course, but of course at the same time, we have to make money. Otherwise, we cannot, support the community, vice versa. So how do they do business in the past shows how strong, how resilient they can recover from the coronavirus. This is what I found.
Thank you, Toshi. Sam, final words of wisdom?
Well, probably not wisdom, but I'd like to thank Ethan, Toshi, and the audience today. It has been very much pleasure of mine to be here today and share some idea of Kikkoman Corporation. Kikkoman is a very old company, but as 300 years history, we changed to adapt the new things. And one of the things was, of course, internationalization, and we have been very successful in that area. After Corona pandemics, I'm not sure, what's going to happen, but I'm sure we will survive, and we will do business for the next 100 years and more. Thank you very much again, and it's my pleasure.
Well, I will echo those thanks and give you both a round of applause for the audience that cannot do so, for a truly engaging and meaningful conversation. I'm grateful to the 225 of you out there who are still with us, even though we've gone over. I'm grateful for all the engagement you've had on the chat and on the Q&A. And since you're still here and I feel like I should give you something, I'll give you one final thought from me, which is more of a picture. This is not a centuries old picture, I hope we can say, but it is an old one. And this, I have been a consumer of centuries-old companies of Japan in the past and continue to be. And I have to admit that Sam's comments about exchanging food culture, exchanging history, exchanging meaning in the products we buy and sell means a lot to me. And so I'm grateful to you, Sam, and Kikkoman for continuing to supply my family and I with the chance to buy the wonderful product and eat the wonderful food that you enable. Thank you to the two of you again. Thank you to Japan House and the whole team. And thank you to all of you for staying with us and enjoying this. We'll look forward to the next seminar where we continue to pick up, Toshi, on those ideas of resilience and how it is that we can think about sustainability being a meaningful asset going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethan. Wow, what a wonderful, inspiring discussions that all of you had, for a very thought-provoking discussions that you had. Thank you, Ethan, for being the wonderful moderator. Thank you, Sam, for sharing your corporate philosophy, as well as the very interesting videos that we will not be able to get to see anywhere else. And Toshi, for your thoughtful comments, originated in the long years of your research. I wish that we had more time, but it's good to remind you that the first of the webinar series, so the second one will be coming up in September. So those of you who haven't signed up our newsletter, please do so, because you keep updated about our upcoming programs, including the second round of the webinar. So thank you again. I wish to see you again in the next webinar. When you exit the program, you'll be redirected to our survey page. Please take a moment to fill it out so that we can continue providing you with high quality programs in the areas of interest. Please also follow us on social media platform Japan House LA to stay up to date on our events and programs. So thank you again so much, and see you next time.